that the Gauteng government has dissolved the Mamelodi Taxi Association following acts of violence in the area. Gauteng Transport MEC Jacob Mamabolo lodged an urgent application with the court following the violence which claimed the lives of at least 19 people. Now the MEC joins me for more on this story. MEC, good evening rather. Tell us a bit more about the nature of these killings and how they took place.
Well, firstly, good evening to you and to all the viewers, and thanks for the opportunity. Let me confirm that, yes, as the provincial government, we were granted with an order effectively and finally dissolving the Mamelodi Amalgamated Taxi Association, which is MATA. And this is because over the last few years, just in this association alone, more than 19 people, between 19 and 25 people have been killed. And the number, we're still consolidating it from the members verifying it with the police, but we can confirm at least more than 19 have died over the last years. And whilst matters of the death of members, including executive members, is before law enforcement agencies and the police investigating, but we felt that we can't just watch every almost now and then dead bodies piling up, human life being lost in a taxi association that was brought together by members who hold instruments of the law, in this case issued with operating licenses. And in the period, I must also clarify that the order we got yesterday was actually a final order. The interim order was granted last week, Thursday. In the 2 weeks prior to the interim order being granted, there has been a series of intimidations, disruption of public violence, with police on one day arresting a heavily armed group. That was on a Wednesday last week, a gang of heavily armed men. And this also followed the banning of a taxi vehicle in the area. And if we didn't move promptly and swiftly, there could have been more loss of life, almost a bloodshed, given the type of guns that people were caught having in Mamelodi. So as a province, really, and we're bringing great relief to commuters, to people of Mamelodi, but also we think this will go a long way to building and strengthening our efforts to reduce taxi violence and to make sure that instruments that are created by the law are not captured and hijacked by crooks and criminals to use them as instruments to commit crime, including threatening lives of people. And of course, as I say, these are matters that are before investigations, but it can't be right that people die at this rate and at this number, and there's no prompt and swift action from our side. That's why we had to take a action, and we're very much pleased with that.
MEC, what does this mean then for the people of Mamelodi? If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that part of how this violence has been meted out has been through, various individuals, and one never knows when exactly they're going to strike. So how safe then are the commuters who use public transport in Pretoria, in Mamelodi? And is there any intervention in the form of greater police action targeted towards that area that we're going to see in the coming days?
Well, I guess perhaps the best way to put the matter is just, as I was saying, that prior to the interim order, commuters there have been caught up between gunfire, internal strife and fight within members of MATA themselves. Commuters' access to public transport was dismally disrupted and people were inconvenienced. And to that extent, as I'm saying, last week, this week, there's not been any single incident. There's been stability benefiting commuters. So all I can say now, and perhaps the best way to respond to what you're saying, and I hope I'll do exactly what you're asking me to do, is we have brought great relief to commuters who now, on a daily basis, to date, have not had any experience of public transport, in particular taxis disruptions. And that is why we're so pleased that this court order that dissolves the structure there has actually reaffirmed and vindicated our view that the taxi violence, the disruption of commuter life and people's lives going to work was as a result of the internal strife. And that is why we're very much relieved with the fact that people can be able to go to work, go to school, commute without having to face what has been happening in the last 2 weeks prior to getting the interim order, now the final order. This is, I can assure you, a major victory, unprecedented, high impact, very good for commuters in the province and for the taxi industry, because this violence, the people who die in this violence are taxi operators, taxi leaders, and you can imagine their families without their loved one, without parents. So to that extent, I can say this is very good, and we will be tightening it up with regulations that we will put together. We are working on that. We are finalizing them so that what this quarter gives us is translated into regulations that we can be able to enforce, protect commuters, protect the taxi industry, taxi associations from being used as instruments of crime by all sorts of people that really thrive on murder. And this is exactly what we are trying to bring to an end.